My name is Franz-Albrecht Oettingen-Spielberg, and I've dedicated my life to understanding and hunting Europe's most magnificent game species. Join me as I share my passion and field experience in the management and pursuit of my favorite five, where conservation, ethical hunting, and sustainable management guide every decision we make.
It's getting darker. I'm still hopeful. It just feels it's such a cold evening with little wind. It's a perfect evening for the beginning of the roar, the beginning of the rut. I don't know how many times sitting here, I'm sure you can relate, how many times I've pictured him coming out of those pine trees and how the situation would play out and so on. Hundreds of times in the last, 2 hours. It's just always when you think you have something figured out with red deer, they completely surprise you and do the strangest things. And most of the time they just disappear. I still think we have a really good chance that he... Did you hear that? That's good. That was a roar. No. He's on the other meadow. He's on the other meadow. We have to be super quiet. Super quiet while we get the ground's relatively dry. Super quiet. We have to stalk through a little forest, then we get to the meadow. I'm 95% sure that I heard a stag roar there. The only one that we've seen there the last few days is the one that we're looking for. I mean, not seen, but with cameras, and one other person has spotted him, so I think the chance is super high that's him. So okay. We have to cross this bit of forestry. On the other side is the meadow where we just heard the stag. As you can see, it's super dry, and it's really difficult to come through or to go through here. But we have to risk it. Usually, the meadow is not huge, but it's big enough that if he's not right where we are, which I don't think he is because the way I heard him, he's further out. So let's see. just walks out onto the meadow as he's never been anywhere else. You know, it's like they just suddenly appear, and when they appear with such authority. It's not like they're a scared little beast that only comes out at night. No, they move, but they're just very difficult to pattern. And tonight, once we got it right. I mean, we were on a different meadow. He didn't come out there, but we heard him while he was either coming out onto the meadow here or while he was already out here. And as you saw, when he was moving to the right, I stopped him by doing a cow call, which is like, and on the second cow call, he roared. So he is in the rut. He feels it. Oh, I can't believe it. Let's get our things and slowly make our way. I saw him crash. I think the shot is good, just behind the shoulder. He was slightly quartering away, so it should really be underneath his shoulder on the other side, or maybe even an exit. Very exciting, man. Down. Let's make a move. I'm gonna leave the sticks here. I don't know, let's see.
There's two go-to knives that I use during the stag rut. Firstly, there's my folding knife that I also use for all types of hunting, mainly also in the roe deer rut. It carries one blade that can be fixed, and with this button can be folded again. Then there's one knife that has a dull end to it, so that's great for opening the skin, the stomach skin, without punching the actual stomach. And then I also have the saw to open any bones that I need to. So this is always on my belt, just in case that I don't have the bigger knife with me, for example, because I'm not wearing my hunting belt. This is usually on the belt of my pants. Yeah, I can also open the odd bottle just in case. And it's a really good piece of equipment out for hunting. The second knife I use, now this is a proper knife. This is really a Stag knife. It has a proper size, which you can see here already from the grip. The grip size, it's a big, hefty knife, and it really gives me all the possibilities or all the flexibility that I need for grullicking a stag or anything else. It's robust, it's big, it's very sharp, and it's, I think, for stag hunting, just the ideal knife. It has stag horn as a grip, and the way the blade is shaped, it gives me everything I need for stag hunting. What an experience last night, especially when you know and stag like this for so many years. I think many of you will understand whether you're hunting for whitetail, whether you're hunting fallow deer, whether you're hunting roe deer. Once you have this year-long relationship with a stag or with an animal that you have followed for so many years, it becomes a different type of hunt. And this is definitely what it was with this stag. And yeah, I think we were lucky to find him where he was yesterday. He still didn't have any hinds, so he's still a searching stag, so he could be anywhere today or tomorrow. They're now just beginning to go into the rutting areas. They're beginning to find the hinds, and I mean the rut will really start maybe in 10, 14 days time. But it's a good time right now at the beginning to find these searching stags, and especially stags like this. They're not easy to find when the rut is really going, because as you can see, he has this old damage that he did to his left coronet when he was a 1-year-old. And we have pictures from him as a 1-year-old all the way up to today where he's 11, 12 years old, where I don't think that this is as stable as on, I would say, completely healthy stags. I mean, he's a healthy stag, but I would say that he's probably fighting-wise, he cannot compete with a really big, normal stag. So I think in the rut, in the main rut, we've seen him a few times over the last few years, but he's never been one of the dominant stags. So he's always been like the satellite stag on the borders around the rutting areas, and he's been difficult to locate. So we were lucky to get him at the beginning of the roar this year. Now what's interesting, as you can see, his left side is the side that has always been abnormal, and that is because as a spiker he broke off his pedicle, and that has always grown slightly in an oval shape. As you can see by his cast antlers, it's always been this very strange oval shape, but that's made it easy for us to distinguish which are his cast antlers. And here you see 4 that we found from the last few years. They're not in consecutive years, they're from different years. We sadly don't find all the cast antlers all the time because it's very difficult to do that. They usually cast their antlers end of January, February, and then, yeah, the big search begins. Now in this one, it's interesting to see, I mean, you can always see that he's had this oval-shaped coronet, but he really made a big change from his middle-aged years to his older years. So if you see this and this, the most obvious change that he did was towards the middle of the horn. He has put in this big arc that he didn't have in his middle-aged years. And also his tray tine, so this is brow tine, bay tine, tray tine. His tray tine, when he was middle-aged, was down here. And when he got old, his tray tine moved up into his crown. So usually you say, to distinguish between stags and cast antlers, the 2 or 3 things that don't change is the general form and the angle at which the brow tine and the tray tine come off the main beam. And on this particular stag, I would, if I found these 2 in the forest and he didn't have this extreme oval-shaped coronet, I don't think I would have said that these 2 are the same stag. So they can change a lot in their form throughout the years, and it's been incredible to study this stag over the years because he did change a lot. And also on his right-hand side this year, if you see, this is his right-hand side from last year. So as you can see, the crowns are relatively similar from this year to last year. The tray tine is similar on this side. The bay tine has gone into an abnormal shape. Now that can be because during the velvet time, he either bumped a tree or something and broke it off, and it has grown into this type of growth. And the brow tine is similar, but what has changed completely is the size and the shape of the coronet. Now, interestingly, when we saw him last night walking out onto the meadow, you could see that he had a slight limp on his back side. So we haven't really been able to figure out what it is, but there was a limp. And we know that he has had this limp throughout the summer. So there is a possibility that because of the limp on his backside, there's some abnormality that happened on the coronet. Because as you probably know, if they have a problem with one of their hind legs, the opposite side of the horns then starts to grow in funny shapes. So I'm not 100% sure whether this interesting growth that he has on his right coronet this year, as opposed to what he had last year, is down to a bump that he did during velvet times, or whether it's down to a little injury that he had on his back legs. During the rut many years ago, we saw him when he was wearing this left-hand side, and he came straight towards us in this big open forest, and he was roaring. We had called him in. And of course I could have shot him at this age. He has only a fork on his left crown, and that is a Class B stag. So it's a stag that you can shoot between the age of 5 and 9 years old as a management stag. But I mean, if you compare to what he has become now, some years later, as to what he was then, I think it would have been a shame to shoot him. And of course, a lot of neighbors are out to shoot these type of stags because they're easy to distinguish, and you can't make a mistake in terms of age because he's valid as a shooter even if he's only 5. And you might lose a stag like that. But I prefer to take a risk and let the stag, if he is healthy, and if he's not bad genetics, and he is not a bad genetic stag, he just had this issue with his left-hand side, which makes him so distinguishable between other stags, so I can learn from him by watching him over the years. And I haven't seen many stags that have changed the beam, the main beam, so much from the middle-aged years to the older years like this stag, so I've learned something. And of course, yeah, having seen him so many years ago and having lived with him and seen so many pictures of him and seen him grow, has given me much more than if I would have shot him at this age. And of course, if you shoot abnormal stags, I mean, think about the picture that we had when he was a young stag, like 4 or 5 years old, with this huge flame antler he had on the left-hand side, which we then also found when he cast it. Of course you can shoot a stag at that age, but then you have a 4 or 5 year old stag and you never get the experience of following them until they become something really special. And yeah, I mean, everybody, or often people, look for shooting or hunting old animals, whether it's stags, fallow bucks or roebucks, but you can't shoot them old if you've shot them when they're young. So you really, I mean, I'm not saying that this is something that everybody should do, but personally I prefer shooting an old stag than shooting them at middle-aged. And especially with red stags and fallow deer, and also with roe deer, I mean, the natural mortality of males in these populations is much higher than females anyway, because they fight so much, because so many different things happen to them after the rut. They're low on energy, they come into the winter, and so they have a tougher life and a higher mortality rate. So I think shooting less when they're young and less when they're middle-aged to try and get them to the older age, which is also good for the social structure, makes a lot of sense to me. And I generally try not to shoot any of the spikers because it's very difficult to judge what a spiker will do in the later years. I have a very good friend called Duncan Fraser. He farms over 2,500 red deer in New Zealand. So I've been able to ask him a lot of questions. I've been able to see his farm, and we're in constant contact about this. It's really difficult to judge a red stag when he's 1 year old, what he will do when he gets older. And also shooting them at 2, 3 or 4 years old, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. Of course, if you have an overpopulation and your structure between females, so hinds and stags, is good, or you have enough stags, then of course take out the worst ones. But most of the time, especially in these free-ranging areas, the proportion of males to females is usually that you have many more females than males. And if that's the case, don't shoot. I would suggest not to shoot the young stags, even if they are a selective stag like this and they're interesting. Keep them and see what they'll do, learn from them, and do something good for the population, because you need these old stags in the population for, firstly, the genetic exchange, because the older the stag, the more male offspring he'll produce. The male offspring will start to wander into different areas. I mean, they can do 25, 30 kilometers in a night. And these young, good spikers, they will go on trips and will find different populations of red deer, and then that's where the genetic exchange happens. So, and also these old stags during the roar, they make sure that the young stags aren't part of it. They don't breed, which is important because they need to be mature, fully mature, before they actually start taking part in the mating process. Now, I'm sorry, I've taken a long tangent, but you can see how incredibly passionate I am about this species. And every time we manage to get to get a stag to this age, which is not often, because so many things can happen to them on the road to the age of 10, 12, 13 years old. It's just a long span of time, and there's so many dangers, and when it does work, it's double the joy, and it kind of makes everything that we do worthwhile. Now here we have these beautiful 2 teeth that the stags and hinds have just below the nose on the top jaw. They're not really of any use to them. It's an evolutionary tooth that is still there with no use, but it's part of the trophy that the hunter gets given next to the horns or the antlers. And this is a particularly beautiful one because of the coloring that it has. And we always say that you have a woodcock head. Here you can see the beak, and there you can see the head. So they're particularly beautiful on this stag, and they will find a wonderful place in my little wooden box. Now, this is the 6.5 Creedmoor. This is the projectile that we cut out of the stag. Now the stag, as you saw, he was broadside. I shot just behind the shoulder. He was slightly quartering away from us, just behind the shoulder, and the projectile was stuck underneath the skin on the other side. So it had gone through behind the shoulder, through the heart and lungs, and then through the shoulder blade, and was stuck underneath the skin. The shot was probably 140 meters, something like that. The stag ran for maybe 60, 70 meters and was stone dead. This is a 6.5 Creedmoor, 143 grain ELD-X. And as I've always said, I'm an extreme fan of the ELD-X cartridge. I've had it in all types of calibers, and I still use it in all types of calibers. And the 6.5 Creedmoor is a relatively new caliber for me, and I wanted to see how it does on these bigger animals. I've used it on roe deer, but now I've used it on stags. I would probably prefer to go a little bigger in the roar, because they're even more full of adrenaline and even stronger, and they can take more of a punch. But now for just the beginning of the roar and these August stags, it's a really fantastic caliber. It shoots so comfortably. There's absolutely no kick. And the bullet performance of these ELD-X, and there's only 143 grains, so it's just over 9 gram. It's really not a heavy cartridge, but you can see how important the performance of the cartridge is, which I think is more important than the actual caliber. Yeah, and he did amazingly well on this one. So here he is. I think he's just one of the most magnificent, unique stags that I've ever seen. The reason why we took him this year is because he also went abnormal on his right side here, which was usually not the case, and he had a slight limp. I don't think the limp was a huge issue for him, but I think at 11 he reached what he needed to. What I really look forward to is we're also obviously going to send the lower jaw to the Institute for judging age. And with this particular stag, we know that he's 11 because we've known him from the very first year. And I'm looking for, obviously I'm not going to tell the Institute how old this stag is. So they're going to get this lower jaw and make their evaluation. And in this respect, I can now do a little test on them and see how good they get to this age of 11. I mean, usually they say when you get the document back, they give you a ±1 year mistake possibility. And yeah, let's see where they land. I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, I think at this point it's really important to thank everybody in the background who usually are in the foreground of our management and on the hunting side, on the forestry side, in the office. It wouldn't be possible without all of you. You know who you are, and I thank you from everything I have for everything that you do and for your dedication and professionalism. It's a lot of fun and it's very rewarding what we do and how we do it, and I enjoy it a lot. So thank you very much.